Today I'm going to talk to you about the book What You Know by Heart, How to Develop Curriculum for Your Writing Workshop, written by Katie Wood-Ray, and I'm going to specifically be discussing chapters 4 through 6. Katie Wood-Ray was first a junior high school teacher before working for the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, and now currently she is the teacher at Western Carolina University. She said that this book is just about us, about teachers of writing, and how we can use this thought process to turn our experiences with writing and reading into curriculum for our teaching. In this book, she explains how she developed her mini lessons by noticing things about herself as a writer. And as she would read different things and say, oh, I want to show these to my students. So all of the things in this book are her thoughts and her ideas of how the things that happened to her in her life as she experienced different writing, how she then turned that into mini lessons and curriculum. To review chapters 1 through 3, one of the first things that we teach our students is how to find ideas for writing, and that could be in line at the grocery store or by observing the full moon at night. The importance of keeping a writer's notebook so that wherever you are, you can write down your thoughts and your ideas and begin writing pieces. And it's important to know that a writer's notebook travels away from your desk, out of the classroom, and with you into the world. Telling the story of our writing as teachers leads us to curricular themes. So as you begin to write as a teacher in your writer's notebook, you can then share that thought process with your students. A term that Katie uses is seed idea, and that's an idea that will eventually grow into a published piece. Looking closely at mini lessons, teaching from our own writing, to do this, we have to become good storytellers. We have to be engaging and keep our students' attention as we talk to them about writing and about our stories. You select your curricular focus, and then you tell your writing story around it. And I'm going to give you some examples of those in mini lessons. To begin, mini lesson, this is example number 1. The mini lesson is titled, Writers Try Rewriting an Existing Entry and Craft it to sound like literature. So as I talk to you just like a teacher would talk to her students during a mini lesson, I'm going to be talking and then I'll show you each different curricular focus throughout this lesson. Writers, today I'm going to teach you that you can rewrite an existing piece and you can craft it to sound like literature. I know at this point most of you have a lot of entries that you've gathered in your notebooks. Most of you have really great stuff in there that you've written both in class and out of class. This made me think that it was probably time to start showing you some of the things you can do to build more writing out of the writing you already have. That's the great thing about keeping a notebook. Once you get a few entries in there, you can just go on building new entries out of those because you always have stuff to work with. The strategy I want to show you today is actually one I really like to try myself as a writer. I used it not long ago. First, I was in my office and I had some time, so I was looking over some writing I could do. I started rereading my notebook and just looking at all the different entries I had in there. Then I came across one I had written after my husband and I spent the day at a lake. I saw some very fascinating water bugs while I was sitting on my jet ski, and I was watching them, and they were just so marvelous. So as soon as I got into the truck and dried off, I got out my notebook and I wrote an entry. I just described them the best that I could. As I was trying to get down as much detail as I could in this first entry, I was writing very fast, and I wasn't really paying a lot of attention to how the words sounded. I just wanted to write it really fast before I forgot what it looked like. So I came across this entry and I was rereading it and I liked the line, water bugs skate on a mirror of lake, which is a line that just came to me as I was watching them that day. I decided for my writing work that day I was going to try writing it again, but this time I wanted it to sound more like literature. I thought it'd be fun to play around and try to give it the same kind of sound that some of those books I really like Canoe Days by Gary Paulsen or Scarecrow by Cynthia Rylant. So first I got those two books and I was rereading them to myself just to get a sound of how the literature sounded. Then I started rewriting the entry. I flipped back and forth between the first pages where I'd written it and the new entry. I was really trying to get the words to sound more like literature. I tried to extend that metaphor little line by line, and it just came to me. Water bugs as skaters. The whole time I was writing the second more literature-like entry, I was keeping in my head the sound of those books I was trying to write like. I really liked trying this, and I can even see some potential. It's something I might come back to and work more and more on over time. I've always wanted to publish something like this, a picture book, something quiet and beautiful about nature. So as I found this entry that I liked, I came back to it and know that I can take this to the publishing piece. Before I give you another mini lesson example, I wanted to review that a seed idea is the beginning move towards publication, and it gets us moving in the writing direction that we want to go in. This mini lesson, example number 2, is about a seed idea can be a connection between several entries in the notebook written at very different times for different purposes. So I'm going to model a mini lesson for you, and as I click through, you'll be able to see what the curricular focus was. As we're thinking about all the different ways writers choose their seed ideas, I want to tell you about a seed idea I found in my notebook. First, I was rereading entries and I came across one about a dragonfly. And then I realized that I love to look at tiny things like dragonflies in nature, insects, mushrooms, flowers, blades of grass. I'm fascinated with their beauty, and I began to think about observing them would be something I'd like to write about. And then I began to think that I have a lot of entries in my notebook that are already about observing little things. So I went back through my notebooks and I found out I had 11 different entries on observing little things. 2 on gnats, 2 on spiders, 2 on water bugs, a lizard, a caterpillar, a dragonfly. And I realized that with these entries, I already had a really good start on a writing project. So I know that if I worked on this, I would want to observe more because I want to base everything that I have on observations. And I know that I would also need to do research to answer questions that these tiny creatures would pose for me. At this point, I'm kind of unsure of what genre I'd like to write. Maybe I could do poetry. I could also maybe do informational text. I could use photographs to go with it. I have endless options. Chapter 5 discussed letting authors co-teach the curriculum of process to our students. When we see an author's published writing, picture books, novels, articles, poems, we can't see the process that came behind them. We can attend professional authors sessions at conferences, we read interviews with authors, we watch book TV and Oprah's Book Club. We can also invite authors to speak with our classrooms, but we don't know the process that came behind each author and how we can teach that. Virginia Hamilton got the idea for Plain City when she was teaching at Ohio State University and she got caught in a winter ice storm. She pulled off the interstate and there was a sign that said Plain City. She then said that every time she passed the sign, she would think about Plain City and wonder what the characters would be like, what kind of things go on there. And we can find the following curriculum from her quote of explaining how she got the idea for Plain City. Writing ideas come from something you wonder about over and over again. If there's a place you've always wondered about, try making up characters and a setting to go with that place. And writers can become very attached to the stories they create, and the fictional world becomes almost real to them. There is no single right and magical process for writing. If you ask 50 different authors the same questions about their writing, you might get 50 different answers. Some will be variations of the same answers, the connections, but some will be just outright different ways of thinking or going about the writing process. Those are the disconnections. The following are interviews with different authors about their writing process. J. Patrick Lewis said that there was a time that he only wrote on yellow legal pads and swore that he'd never use a word processor. Cynthia Rylant says, I never use machines. You'll never see me sitting on a typewriter or writing on a word processor when I'm composing. And Jane Yolen said that most of the time she has to be working on a typewriter. So what exactly should we teach our students about getting those drafts down on paper? Word processors, longhand typewriters, magically found pens and pencils? The answer to that is that there's no right answer. We have to teach our students all of these possibilities. You need to also read like a teacher of writing. The world is full of writing that makes us slam on our brakes when we're reading and think, oh, wow, look at that. I need to show that to my students. Magazines, newspapers, memos, novels, billboards, emails, messages, lyrics, letters, poems, short stories. Every time we see writing, we are seeing what we teach. Promote students with a sense of identity so that you can then teach them to read like people who write. Make predictable times and spaces in the classroom where students write every day. Encourage them to find ideas and share lots of different writing. As teachers of writing, we develop a habit of wondering, how is this written? We then ask this question as we are reading and studying the type of text that we are going to teach our students how to write. Imagine having a single well-written text in your hand. You can look at it very specifically and find out all kinds of things about writing. Questions to ask with this text and general approach to the writing is, what is this piece about? How does this help me think about the topic? Who's narrating this piece? What do we think the author intended to do with this piece of writing? In construction of the text, you might say, how does the title relate to this text? How does it start? How does it end? Making the language work. What interesting work are the various parts of speech doing in the text? What is the writer doing with the sentences in the text? Is the text divided into paragraphs? Does the writer manipulate any conventions to make meaning? Questions of picture books. What is the overall approach to the illustrations? How are the illustrations used to make meaning in the text? And in conclusion, when we teach mini lessons, we choose a curricular focus for the lesson and then tell the writing story around it. We allow authors to co-teach the curriculum process. We teach students numerous possibilities about how to write and publish. And we must always be on the lookout for good writing to share with students.